Hello and welcome to this next tutorial. Today we're going to try and get this little fella, BB8, from Star Wars The Force Awakens, running around the tube stations, London Underground. So we're going to use a camera track and some clever little things with some nulls and some parenting to make sure our surfaces are really good and our track's good. We've got some moving image as well to deal with and some element objects as well, which is obviously BB8. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Alright, sorry, this was just the thing I was working on earlier. Let us create a new composition by dragging in my main footage that I shot just on the tube station, which I'll just walk around looking at what it is, trying to keep it relatively still, even though the camera track is pretty good. Just trying to avoid blur, basically. I think that's the main issue with this one. So we've got an issue with this train. If I was to try and camera track this now, let's try and spell that right, it's not going to work. It's going to fail because it's not going to recognize this as part of the static scene. It's going to get confused with areas that are still and areas that are moving, and it's going to be a mess and it's just not going to work. So one way to deal with this is to mask it out of the scene, so the camera does not see the moving train. So what we need to do is pretty simple. Is we just pull back to say there, and we just get our mask pen tool and we just mask out this train, say from about there. Just go into our mask, key that. Let's just turn that off so I can just see the outline of it. Pull in, and let's just move the train back to where it starts, and we can just mask right off. So now the mask is roughly following this train, and we can do that just all the way down the platform, just keeping it. Let's do that to a fit. Roughly around the edges. Try not to key too much of the still footage we need to track out, because we do need to get as much information as possible into our 3D camera that we're hoping to extract out of all this stuff. So just keep going. You can be quick as you want, slow as you want. You can fast forward this bit if you like. I am just going to keep going because I like to do that. Decide to keep it live, but like I said, you can fast forward it if you want to. I'm going to go all the way, and then when the train stops, I will get rid of the mask, so then the camera can restart tracking a static train. So it's reintroducing a static element into the same shot. It should work. I did do that before and it seemed to work okay. So hopefully it'll work again this time. There we are, a little bit more. Nobody likes masking. Actually, one of my next tutorials is going to be about masking, but hopefully afterwards you'll like it, because masking is bread and butter in this program, unfortunately. So if you don't like it, well, you're not going to use After Effects too much, I'm afraid. Yeah, bit more. And come on, train, stop. Yeah, let's just zoom out a little bit. Let's move this over slightly. Just make sure I'm getting the whole movement in this train. Some slack masking here. That's fine. Should be fine anyway. And this area here. Let's pull that down. Keep going on. Hopefully this train is coming to a stop anytime soon. She's asleep. Is she asleep? No, she's awake. She's kind of asleep. She looks like she's asleep. And let's just close this up a little bit here. Like I said, we don't want too much of the non-moving environment masked out because we want the camera to see it. Okay, so let's just get that in there for the last frame. Move that over. And I think I'll try and stop now. So I'm just going to make a keyframe here, and I'm going to move in one frame more, and I'm going to move it straight off the scene. So if I turn that mask back on, there, let's subtract it. It's basically blacked out the train, roughly-ish. And I'm kind of guessing that this is going to work. I really hope it does. Camera tracks can be a little fiddly, a little finicky, and sometimes quite frustrating. Sometimes awesome. So what we need to do to actually get a real track on this, if we select it and pre-comp it, so Control-Shift-C to pre-comp, or layer pre-compose, and we'll just call this tube BB8 main. Why not? Move all the attributes into the new composition because we need our new composition to be clean. Okay, so this is our composition. There is no mask showing because it's inside of this composition here, but it still shows it masked out. The camera will not track this black area, I hope. So next thing we need to do is get our camera tracker, drag it straight onto this layer. Just stop it for a second, and you might need to, you might not need to, but I tend to turn on detailed analysis. It seems to get a better track, but we'll see. So let's see if we give it a go. Alright, so that doesn't look too bad. Let's just lower the quality of this, the preview quality. So it seems to be pretty good, and you can tell by the size of these little X's, the smaller they are, that they are actually represented to be further away. So that looks okay. So let's have a look what happens when the train comes. So as we move forward, let's move forward a bit further. So we've got no track points inside the black necessarily. These ones are just wrong. And then when the train stops, it comes back. So they're starting to track the train again. So I'm pretty happy with this. Okay, so the next bit we need to do is pretty important to get our element 3D or anything you're going to put in this scene to sit in this scene well. Okay, so we want our BB8 to sit on this floor. So what we need to do is find some points that are relatively close to where we think our robot is going to be. So this is a good one here. Looking at here, if you hold in the middle of these 3 points, it's triangulating between these 3 and giving you a relatively looking flat surface. So that's pretty good. Actually, one thing before I do anything, if I go into here and turn my mask, in fact I can delete the mask. Delete the mask from inside there. Then when you come back, well, the train is back in shot. So anyway, this area here looks pretty flat on the surface. So if I right click on here, create null and camera, what's that's done is put a tiny little null, which is not that tiny. I'll explain to you in a second why that appears to be so small. Let's just go into scale and scale this null right up a fair old bit. So a bit more. There is our null, and it's sitting, let's just lower this again, pretty well. That looks pretty solid on the floor. Just move it a little bit slower for you. It's not too bad. Okay, it tends to go a bit weird when I move it too fast. So that's cool. Let's create a couple more, and I'll show you why as well. So if I can find any anyway, let's just make the quality a little bit better. Difficult to see that. Let's see. Let's maybe move forward a bit. Well, it doesn't look too bad. Create a null, and we'll scale that one up. We can take the information here and we'll actually copy it and paste it into there. So if we Control C on the scale there, Control V on the scale there, that appears. Let's just make that a little smaller. Select them so I can see where they are. That's not too bad at all. Let's see if I can find another one. Just for maybe a bit closer. Let's go with that. Create null. Again, I can just paste that straight in and I get my scale on the null. And that doesn't look too bad. They do look like they're sitting relatively well in that space. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to scale this scene down. The camera tracker tends to bring in a camera into a scene that it thinks is massive. It probably thinks this is a mile long when it isn't. It's just a few, probably about 50 meters or something. So we need to scale it down so when we bring in our 3D model, we don't have to scale that up by ridiculous amounts and we wind up having problems with our occlusion and all sorts of things. So the way we would go about that is this, and it's really important that you do this, I think, because otherwise you could wind up with problems in the long run. It's not hard. If you just follow along, it's only going to take a minute or two. So if we create a new null here, and then we make that 3D, we can see that null is there. It's flying past the camera. If I go to the top view here, it's there. So as the camera moves, it flies past. This null thinks it's in the middle of the scene. This is the scene that it thinks it's the middle of, where it is actual fact, if we zoom out here, these are our three nulls, way, way, way off in the distance, and that is the problem. So we want to bring that down right into the center of our scene here, right into here. So if we select all of these and the camera, all of them, cool, that's obviously the root of the camera. And then we parent this to this null, and then we set this S on the null and we scale it all. Let's move it back in here, right to the start, right down. Just move that in, right down, scale it down so we can see it maybe 3%, and then we can move it back so it's a little bit more easy to work with. Don't worry that I've moved everything around like this and scaled it because the camera's tracked and it may mess up the scene. It won't. It's because I've parented everything to this null. Everything is moving relatively. The actual shot in the background is just a reference. If you imagine this video is just a reference, everything will still sit perfectly, just like that. So now everything's much easier to work with. Right, we don't need this null anymore, I think. Yeah, we can get rid of that. The next thing we should probably do is make sure that these three nulls are sitting on this platform perfectly flat, because they're probably not. And that's just proof that your track's not quite right. But by flattening this out relative to the camera, we can make sure we get at least a much, much better result. So again, if we go to our left view, there you go, you can see this is our camera, and as we move in the shot, these three nulls, which should be flat on the surface, aren't. So I shouldn't have deleted that null, so I'll just undo that. If you have deleted that null, I apologize, just press undo and it will pop back again. So if we go to R on the null that's parenting, and we just need to rotate these guys down so they're flat in reference to each other. That's probably okay. Can we do our rulers on this? Yeah. So if we just pull a ruler down roughly, you can see they're relatively flat. Just do a little bit of rotating, scaling. It's fiddly as hell sometimes, but it's worth it. You've only got to do it once. It's not perfect, but for these purposes, I'm going to go with that. We'll go back to our active camera. And again, they're still sitting in exactly the same spot I left them. There. So now you can delete this null. And now we're ready to start bringing in our 3D element. So I'll just pull this back to half is fine. So if we create a new layer, sorry, a new solid, and we'll call this BB8. Okay. And then in our effects and presets, we go element, and we just drag that onto that solid. Now we can go into our scene setup. And when element loads, here it is. I love this interface. We can go into our star pack. Now there's two BB8s in here. One is BB unit and one is BB unit no rig. I use the BB unit because I know that you can rotate and turn the head and all sorts of bits and bobs like that. You can use this one if you want. It doesn't really make too much to do. There's no point really. You can just bring that one in. So there we are. Let's look at the details on this. Oh, lovely, really lovely. Anyway, bring that in. Look at that, perfect. There it is, sitting really well actually for a floaty thing. Wow. Anyway, so what we need to do is get this BB8 sitting on the floor, and the way we do that is because we've set these up hopefully on the floor, we can just go into our group 1, create group null, create, and it's created this null here which is attached to the center pivot, which is at the base of BB8, so we can move him around in this space. Right, so to get him on the floor, all we need to do is basically pick one of these nulls. I pick this one here, and we take its transform information, in this case its position, Control C to copy that, and we paste it into this group 1 null here, which is parented to our element layer, like that. Now we need to scale it down just a little bit. Particle look, scale that down to say, that'll do. And hopefully that should be sitting right on there, right on the floor. I'm going to lower the res a little bit just so we can scrub through a little bit easier. Yep, that looks good. Make it full res. Make sure we're all over it. Cool. Right, so that's the way I think that you'd get a quick 3D camera track and some element objects sitting quite perfectly into a scene. It won't be absolutely perfect, but it's pretty good, and with a little bit more time and effort you can make that perfect. So next thing we probably want to do is to make this BB8 character look like he's actually sitting here, so with some lighting and some shadows and maybe some reflections as well. So if we go into our, let's create a reflective map first. So if we go into our project and we take our main shot video, whatever shot you've got, take that, drag it into a new comp, and this is going to be our environment layer. So if we go to our composition settings and we type environment, my spelling, it's not my spelling, it's my keyboard, sucks. There we are, and then just close that down, and then we bring that in to our main comp here, shut it down, and then if we go into our element scene, oh, I forgot to do something, come back out, we go to our custom layers, and then we go to custom texture maps. We need to assign this environment to a layer. So if we just say layer 1 and we select environment, that will tell element to pick this layer up for a custom texture. So back we go into element. Now we can click environment, and in here, this pull down here, we can select custom layer environment, and that's going to use the video as an environment layer, which really helps, and with a little bit of adjustment anyway, especially for reflections. So speaking of reflections, I just want to show you a quick trick with BB8 and his textures. This guy, in fact you can see here already the reflections of the posters on the platform, pretty nice. I think he's more reflective than they have him in here. So I'm just going to go in and go into his reflectivity, which is using a map, this map here, which is showing what to reflect, what areas of him that are reflective and what aren't. But I think if I just lower that, it sort of turns that off and goes with a more global reflectivity. So it looks a bit weird turning the reflectivity down and the reflectivity going up, but it's just sort of turning down the effect that texture is having. So I like to turn it down a little bit on each of the little areas, just so I get a little bit more of the environment reflecting in it. It's a bit, you don't really need to do it, but I feel like it helps. Maybe that'll do. So it looks a bit wishy-washy, but we'll see. So we scrub forward. If I go onto half res, hopefully when this train turns up, here's our train, there we are. So I'll just do a quick RAM preview here as that goes. You can see here the train is reflecting as it passes in the side of BB8, which is perfect. I love that. If we didn't have that, it'd be a real pain to create reflection maps and things like that to animate alongside this. So this kind of effect is really lovely, and that's the kind of thing we sort of want to cheat and get around to make things look really cool really quickly. So let's go and work with some occlusion and things like that. So if I go into render settings and we go to ambient occlusion, turn it on, and you should see a tiny bit of darkness here. Let's just pull ourselves in and we up that to say there, and now we want to create a little shadow underneath here. So if we go back into our scene setup and we want to create a plane, there it is, and let's just scale that right up because we want it to cover any area that this guy may run around on this platform. So that's good. With the texture on this plane model, we probably want to give it a tiny bit of reflection. No, we just want a matte really. So if we scroll right down here to matte shadow, that's the one we're looking for. Turn that on. Either way. Anyway, there it is, and that's created a nice soft shadow underneath, probably a little bit strong. So let's calm down to our intensity, maybe lower it down a little bit. Maybe the radius, if we lower that to 0.8, I'd a guess. Maybe up the intensity again to 13, maybe not, back to 11. There we are. I feel like I need to scale him down a little bit more as well. So let's just make him 4.5 or something. Or 5. There we are. Okay. So there he is. It's not too bad with the lighting and everything. So maybe we can add some lights that represent some of these lights up here. But just to show you how easy this should be to move around, if I move him around on the flat plane, he should sit, whoops, let's move the actual null itself, he should sit pretty well perfectly on the platform floor, and that's what we're looking for. That makes life so much easier for animating, or for any kind of setup or stills or whatever you want to do. So anyway, let's create this light here, parallel light. Let's try and color dot a little bit of the environment color, so maybe a slight yellow there. Okay, I love the way the light always appears really far away, so we'll just take the position, and there it is. Bring it round. Maybe a bit there. And then over in Z. Just so it's above. That looks pretty nice. Okay, so that's pretty much the way we'd go about tracking, bringing in a 3D object, lighting him ish. But I think that's pretty cool. I mean, I'd be happy with that. The track seems to be pretty stable. The reflections look great. So the next thing, you know, we can show you is how to animate this thing. So this is the X direction here, which is not quite right across the platform, but that doesn't matter. And if you look in the group 1 auxiliary channels, you'll see channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, all the way up to 10. It's channel 1 and channel 2 we're interested in. So if you pull down channel 1 and you open up rotation, you'll see here there's channel 1 rotation. These are basically X, Y, and Z. So if you move this one here, you'll see that it's rotating his body in X, and this one will spin it around on its pivot in Y, and this one will be the opposite direction in Z. So if we were to animate BB8 from here, let's say, to, let's see, let's get a position down there, position there, move across a few frames, bring him over this side because he's scared of the incoming train. He's not seen many trains before. I fully understand, they're pretty scary things. Let's just get a easy ease here. Let's lower this down to half. So train's coming in, choo choo, he begins to move over. Nothing's happening, but he is animating nicely along the surface. So what we need to do is rotate his body. So again, if we go into BB8, into channel 1, rotation here, if we key that and we go into this area here, the last key here, and we just rotate it back this way. In fact, don't know how much, I'm completely eyeballing it. So the next thing is just scroll back and then just scrub through, and that's not right at all. But what we need to do, if you press U on that layer, then it will bring up the keyframes you've got in there. So if you go right click keyframe assistant and then easy ease, that may make it a little bit closer. And that, not too bad. Complete luck. Or is it? No, it's complete luck. And over he goes. And then I get the same thing for the head, so I'll show you the head as well. So there he is. And that's quite nice. So with the head, he is on channel 2. And again, same thing. If you open up the rotation, you have this kind of thing here. So if we turn his head to face the direction he's going, say there, okay, let's zero that bit out, so his head's straight. And this one here, there we are, this is probably a combination of the two, getting him to lean. He's a great character. Yeah, that'll do. So if we we'll key all three of those, and then back there, I will zero that, and that'll be it. So if I press U and U again on that layer, delete that, and then I can right click easy ease on the X and Z, I'm hoping he moves his head a little bit. As he goes. And he does, just a little bit. You can also add a wiggle effect if you wanted to on his head. Actually, I've just thought of that. That might work really well. So if we Alt click on these stopwatches here, let's go for the rotation on the head, and we type wiggle 2, 4. Copy that and Alt click on Z, paste it, and then see what happens. And this is kind of how it is with this kind of animation. You just guess. If it works, brilliant. If it doesn't, don't do it. Think of something else. As long as you know why it's not working, then you can't really go wrong. There we go. So let's just shut that there. So it's B and N to close your composition render preview window. B to start, N to finish. And let that param preview through. To drain. Still seeing the reflection. There we are. Okay, I think that probably much covers it for now. Give us a shout if you've got any questions. Thanks for a lot of the feedback on this one. And with the TIE Fighter, you're right, I did forget to parent this null to one of the nulls I created, which was completely my fault, but it worked anyway. Thanks for pointing that one out. Brilliant. So I'll catch you next time. I've been Matt Smart. Take it easy.